9:15 this Wednesday morning. I'm delighted to say John Feehan, who is the CEO of Basketball Ireland, is with us in studio to talk to us about the strategic plan which they launched last week. John, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's a week on since you officially launched the 5-year strategic plan for Basketball Ireland. So how has it been received by the various stakeholders? What's the response been like?
It's been extremely well received, actually. The nice thing about it is it's quite a simple document. I mean, there's nothing very fancy about it. It just states very succinctly what we're trying to achieve, how we're going to do it, and basically it's a very simple document, as I said, but it has been received extremely well. We sent it out on emails to over 30,000 people within our stakeholder groups, and all the response back from all social media channels and everything else has been very positive.
So give us some sense of how big the sport of basketball is in Ireland and what you think the potential is.
Actually, basketball is a very big sport in Ireland. To put it in context, we've nearly 42,000 post-primary schools players. We have 37,000 registered club members. That doesn't include colleges, doesn't include masters tournaments, doesn't include primary schools, doesn't include informal basketball players. So I suppose the estimate overall would be close enough to 100,000 people playing the game every year in Ireland.
The gender split is quite even as well?
Absolutely, 50-50, which is fantastic, and also very diverse. We have up to 79 different nationalities playing the sport here in Ireland, which is fantastic, you know. And every colour of skin, every it's probably the most reflective sport of a modern Ireland that you can get.
On a personal level, why did you want to take on the challenge of basketball? People will be familiar, or maybe not familiar, with the fact that your background is in rugby. You've been involved with the Six Nations, you've been involved with the then Pro 12, with the Lions as well. So out of the frying pan into the fire in some ways. But also, what was it about basketball that you decided, okay, I could do this?
Well, there's kind of two parts to that. The first is, I suppose I'd spent quite a long time in rugby, 16 years doing that. So I just needed a new challenge, really, at the end of the day. And basketball, when I looked into it a little bit, just said to me, it screamed something that needed a new approach. And I think, you know, obviously I come with no baggage, and I'm going in with quite a lot of experience in terms of how to help sports realise their potential. And that's really the main reason why I'm there. It's fantastic. The people are great, the volunteers are great. It's a big sport, as I said, probably not as well known as it should be, but it's really, really getting there.
It always feels like it's a little bit of an undiscovered, unpolished gem in Irish sports, and for various reasons, which there's no need for us to relitigate. But when you were going in and doing your interview, not to relitigate it, but what was the bit that was like the bit that got you fired up about it?
It was just the potential. Huge potential, and you know, it's also its profile. You know, we mentioned earlier on the range of people who play it. I mean, there isn't there's very few sports I can think of anyway that would be even close to a 50-50 gender split. As I said, it reflects Irish society in the most fundamental way, and I think it has such potential to grow as well. I mean, as I said, I got involved with rugby many years ago, and I see it almost like the way rugby was 30 or 40 years ago in terms of its potential to grow. And, you know, we could have very, very serious numbers playing this. And in terms of, government policy is another matter, but if one of the key tenets of government policy is participation, we probably have a better chance of delivering significantly on that than most sports.
Why is that?
There's a number of reasons. As I said, the 50-50 gender split is just we're open to everybody. It's indoors in winter, which is always good in a cold, wet, dark, horrible night.
Yeah.
It's safe.
I think the indoors thing is the single thing you have over all the other sports.
Yeah, I mean to put it in, also it's safe, which is really important. And it's accessible. There's gyms all over the country, which is fantastic. But also, like, to put it in context, basketball is the second biggest sport in the world after soccer. So we have all sorts of role models and competitors to come up against internationally as well as here in Ireland, which is fantastic.
Do you find yourself pitching against the other sports like the likes of GAA and rugby and soccer in Ireland, or is it a case of, especially, I mean, at participation levels in schools and PE, is it important to get basketball in there in young people's brains as an option?
To be fair, I think we're way beyond trying to get it in there. We're actually in there. I mean, as I said, nearly 42,000 secondary school players. That's a lot of players, and most sports would be delighted to have those kind of numbers. Clearly the biggest sports in Ireland are GAA and soccer. We probably have more players than rugby. So to put it in context, so from that point of view, we're very comfortable with that. The other thing too, and it kind of gets back to what you were saying about potential and everything else, basketball, like soccer, is something that can be played very informally. You don't need an awful lot of facilities, or you don't need a big pitch, you don't need whatever. You all you need is a small space and hoop and a ball, and off you go. And you can play it with 2 people, you can play it with 10 people if you want, whatever it is. So from that point of view, it's got loads of potential.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things where you can have a beautiful state-of-the-art gymnasium and full-time professional basketball coaches in some of our secondary schools. Or I was down in Mountjoy Square on Sunday, and there was a pickup game being played, and it was semi-organised, and it was, pretty brutal. They were they were taking it very seriously. And it's every, as you say, every aspect of Irish life is reflected in it. And at the same time, you had LeBron versus Steph Curry last night. So that's the thing that's on telly, and everybody is able to go, okay, I'm part of this continuum here.
Yeah, and later this year now, for instance, we're playing Croatia here in Ireland. We'll have 2 NBA stars coming in to play in that team within Croatia. So we can attract some big stars here into Ireland as well through the international program that we've got. So it's fantastic in that respect.
Is there a high performance aspect that you want to see develop further in? When you look at the likes of boxing and rowing, close to €1 million funding every year, and certainly above that as well. I know there's the Olympic aspect to that, but would you like to see a little bit more funding coming in from the government?
I'm not in any way critical as such of government. To be fair, we get a lot of support from Sport Ireland across many aspects of the sport. The elite funding area is an area where we would certainly like to develop that level of funding. We have pitched our thinking to Sport Ireland. I think they have reacted very positively to it. From our perspective, I think we probably will get delivery on that in due course. The area probably can be looked at first is 3x3. It's a shortened version of the game. You obviously don't need quite as many players for that. So all you need is a very small number of really good players, and most countries can provide that. So it's a very democratic version of the game.
Yeah.
We actually could qualify for Olympics in 3x3 and all the rest of it. So from that perspective, I think Sport Ireland are very favourable towards us, and we're looking obviously for something there in the future.
Irish people might not realise that at 3x3 level we're at the top tier, the Eurobasket stage, which at both teams.
Well, yeah, even at the full game, we're in the Eurobasket competitions now, which is that's the, if you like, the European equivalent of the European Cup or whatever it is. We're at the top tier in that respect. But in 3x3 in particular, the nature of how it's done is that it's a lot easier to get up the ranking lists quickly in that than compared to, say, the full-on game. But it's all these qualification systems are always very complex, and
they're labyrinthine. Sure,
they are. Yeah,
and just because obviously it's an issue in the women's rugby, can the 3x3 players play for the full 5-a-sides?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So there's
and in fact they're very, very complementary. So there's no issue. It's
really great. Obviously, the other big thing then in terms of the senior game is a really strong domestic game. How do you go about learning the lessons from other sports and even from basketball to get the domestic senior game, men's and women's, to a level where people are coming to the matches, there's excitement around them, the media coverage is at a higher level than it is at the moment? What's the plan around that?
Well, they always say, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? The thing is reality. It's about putting a whole series of small things in a row together that actually add up to something big over a period of time. That's the way to do it. But we've done a load of things this year. For instance, we've introduced the Swish Live Statistics app, which you can read all the scores as they happen.
Right.
In all our National League games now. We've introduced an OTT platform for our National League, which is showing over 700 games at the moment per year.
How much is that for subscribers?
It's the introductory offer this year was for the season was about €30, I think.
Okay, so it's good value. If you're a basketball fan, you can watch.
It'll probably
all the
be slightly
national
higher
games.
this year, but
Right.
you know, but it's off that you can watch 700 odd games for £50 basically,
Yeah.
or £30. So yeah, the simple answer is.
So it's a series of different.
So it's a series of different things, and obviously we're engaging with the likes of yourselves far more than we used to, and it's really a case of providing information and communication. We're generating a new database within the actual sport. There's a whole heap of different things. There's a learning management system which is all about education within the sport. That's all been put in place. It's, as I said, a series of steps that together become a big delivery for the sport.
Obviously, getting participation numbers up across the board will mean more people are more interested in games, and then their potential customers who'll go to matches and support a local team, and that's a fairly obvious thing. Is there a chicken and egg in any way where you can hype up the leagues to a level where they actually draw more people in too? I never really know what the answer is when it's because you hear a lot about legacy in the London Games. That's all about legacy, and then there's no legacy. There's literally no legacy. West Ham own the stadium, and there's loads of controversy about the London Games, and it's actually been the same all the way back to Barcelona. The city went bust. There was a housing crisis afterwards, and actually the best thing that they got was the athletes' village. But anything you can follow around, like
there's like any sport, there's a whole series of different things you got to look at. You got to look at everything from the commercial program to the communications program, to digital programs, to discipline, to coaching, to refereeing, to player development, to the senior squad, international senior squads, to the National League program, to the community aspect of basketball, to schools of basketball, to masters. Like, there's a whole heap of different things, and you need to have a strategy against every single one of those to make sure that you're developing it over the next 5 years, and that's what's in this strategic plan.
The National Basketball Arena in Tala features in the strategic plan as well. I know it's 30 years old now, the basketball arena. So the plan is to double the capacity by 2026?
Ideally, yes. That's where we're going. The specific aspects of the details of the plans are being developed, and we're actually looking at 2 or 3 different options. But in reality, yes, it's that, but we want to improve the facilities like the dressing rooms. We also want to give the experience that people have going to the actual arena an upgrade in terms of things like, even simple things like toilets and places to areas
consumers
to hang
demand
out
more.
Yes, exactly. So, but when it's full, even today, even when it's full now, it's an incredible experience to see the place. It's rocking. It really is. When it's full and people are chanting and all that, it's fantastic.
I suppose my question was really about, like, is there a way to have 3 or 4 big clubs around the country who have similar but smaller venues where the atmosphere is the same?
Well, yeah, we do. Most basketball clubs don't own their venues. That's the first thing. There's Neptune in Cork, which is a lovely venue. But there are a number of other venues where we the local Super League sides will play their games. Such as there's a lovely new one now, for instance, in MTU in Cork. There's Belfast Star play out of a lovely brand new facility in Belfast, or will be this year, a new facility in Belfast. There are a number of seriously big gyms with capacities up to, say, 700 to 900 people around the country.
Because the atmosphere of 700 to 900 people as the game is on the line is the type of thing that,
particularly in an enclosed space, it's very noisy. It's very vibrant,
and it looks good on TV.
Looks good,
and that brings the sponsors, and that brings the viewership. And so that's the bit that's.
I mean, the reality is, for instance, on our OTT platform, for instance, there's almost 350,000 plays on it. It's serious numbers, and that's the kind of thing that attracts sponsors as well.
Yeah, no, totally. And like, obviously, in some cases that's the end of the road, because the far more important thing is to have volunteers and good quality coaching, and you have to develop these 2 things simultaneously. So that's always like a today which bite of the elephant are we going to try and.
Well, the thing about basketball is, at the top end with our Super League sides and Division 1 sides, which are the national teams, it's semi-professional at that level. Where the rest of the game, which is over 200 clubs, is all community based, and it's all every part of Ireland. Literally every county in Ireland has clubs. So and schools for that matter. So it's it's a great sport in that respect, and it really gets right down to grassroots.
Are you in favour of there being more college basketball games being played here, or even if there was NBA games being played here? Is that just a win for the basketball community, or would you be concerned? Like, are there any watch outs for that kind of stuff?
We've earlier this year. Sorry, not this year. Later last year, we had 8 college teams over, and that was great. Listen, the more the merrier, as far as I'm concerned. The more we can bring in attractive games for the Irish public to see, that's fantastic. I don't have any issue with that. Indeed, I'd encourage it, and I think it's a good thing. But ultimately, week in, week out, we have at the moment 14 men and 10 women's in the Super League. Sorry, that's my phone. I should have turned.
Probably one of the colleges looking to get a game in.
It probably is. So my apologies.
No worries.
For that.
The money then for the likes of that National Basketball Arena, as you say, some of it is going to come from the commercial revenue. Presumably, you're going to need benefactors as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of different ways we're going to commercialise our pay for the arena. Obviously, we'll look to the increased capacity of the actual stadium itself should lead to significant additional revenue. But then there's also sponsorship, naming rights. We'd look at a patronage program in the States, and of course we will look for some government support here as well. But I don't think there's no reason in the world why they wouldn't. I mean, they support all the other sports, so I don't see why they wouldn't support us as well. So, indeed, they're very encouraging about it.
Is there that American thing is really interesting, because obviously there's loads of Irish Americans who like the game and who would like to help out. Is there anything in fostering closer links with the NBA and any of that kind of stuff? Or
we actually have one link already with the NBA. We run what's called a junior NBA tournament for primary school kids.
Right.
So that's ongoing, and we're looking at maybe setting up a second version of that already in Northern Ireland as well, because it's a 32 county sport. But the reality is, the answer is yes. The closer the connections, the better. But any kind of patronage program is very important that we don't just take the money and run. You've actually got to develop a relationship with the people that over there. You've got to bring them into you. You've got to communicate with them. You've got to make them feel part of the process and let them know precisely what they're helping us to achieve. And even simple little things like maybe asking their sons or daughters to come over and play a bit of basketball during the summer and that kind of thing. So it's you've got to. You can't, as I said, you just can't take the money and run. You've got to actually provide something back.
It's been noticeable that in recent years the GAA has been looking towards basketball, particularly Gaelic football, in terms of coaching evolution, and we know the Dubs had a high-end basketball coaching with them as well. All Irish sport views other Irish sports with a slightly threatened, but it always felt to me like basketball could actually be a great accompaniment for all the GAA players who play in summer and in winter time. And obviously you want people to be focused on your sport, but there's another cohort of people who are basketball sympathisers. Well,
there's many very high-profile Gaelic players who say they cut their teeth in basketball. Many of the skills are very complementary. The seasons are complementary. So in many respects, it's a benefit. The odd thing is some of the counties where basketball is very strong, including Kerry, also happen to be very strong in Gaelic football.
Yeah,
so
Mayo.
And Mayo and in Dublin, and there's a number of others. And the reality is they are actually very complementary in that respect. The skill set's good. It keeps Gaelic players fit and healthy through a dark winter, and for us it obviously provides some great players as well.
You've come from a rugby background where obviously the success of the senior international side in the men's team is based around centrally contracted players. Is that part of the long-term vision? Is there a possibility that you might have a player at each club who's contracted, who's an Irish international?
I'm not sure it'd be through the clubs, but if we went down that route, it'd be through centralised contracts, all right, yes. I think we're probably, depending on how we can get going with the high performance units and that kind of thing, we'll see where we go with that. The simple answer is yes. It's just a case of how quickly we can do it.
Yeah, okay, so it's a good idea.
It's a great idea, yeah, absolutely. To really perform at the top level at international, at full basketball or indeed the 3x3, we're going to need to have a very elite small number of players who we support properly.
Yeah, okay.
The high performance unit, when is that? Is there a timeline on that? Like, I'm just wondering how far behind or otherwise are we of other maybe countries around Europe?
We're not too bad. What we have is one or two individuals within our own organisation who focus on this whole area and do a really nice job. But it does need more specific attention, and we want to make sure that we develop it properly. and give it the time, and it needs some specialist functions. So that's where we're going to have to develop our. But we have gone from a situation where a number of years ago we didn't actually have an international side playing. Now we have both the senior men and senior women in the Eurobasket, which, as I said, is the big European competition for our internationals, and we also. On 3x3, I think we will be in a pretty strong position going forward with that too. We've had some significant scalps in 3x3 over the years.
Well, listen, we wish you the very best of luck with it, John. Thanks a million for joining us in the studio today.
Thank you for the opportunity, guys.
John Feehan, Basketball Ireland CEO, talking about the launch of their new 5-year strategic plan.